Hey, it's Dave. Welcome to Classic Basslines. Today we're going to be talking about the bass line on Move On Up from Curtis Mayfield. This is a great bass line. It's just 4 bars long, it's over 2 chords, and it's a lot of fun to play. It's also fairly easy to get your fingers around, so it's a great one for beginners. In this video, I'm going to break down why I think this is such a great bass line. We're going to talk about the voice leading, we're going to talk about the register, we're going to talk about syncopation. Later in the video, I'll play a slowed down version for you, and after that, I'm going to give you some tips on how to best approach this when you're playing it. If you want to follow along with this lesson, of course, the sheet music and tab is available on my website, classicbasslines.com. So the first thing that jumps out to me about this bass line is the way it avoids parallels. That is, the way it uses voice leading. A lot of times when people have a bass line that's just over 2 chords, especially if they're the same quality of chord, in this case, we have an E minor 7 that's going down to a B minor 7. Those are the 4 and 1 chords in the key of B minor. So it's often tempting, if you have that same quality of chord, if you come up with a pattern over one of the chords, to just repeat that pattern over the second chord. And you know, that's been used in lots of bass lines, and that can be effective, but it's definitely cooler if you can find a way to break out of that and make them a little bit different, because it avoids sort of this idea of parallels, of having everything you play on one chord be the exact same as on the next chord, just moved. So the first part of this bass line over the E minor 7 is like that. Now you'll notice the pattern he plays over the next chord, the B minor chord, has a very similar melodic contour. It flows from high down to low, but it uses a different pattern. So that has a low note of this D here and the high note of the B. So we go back to the first chord. What was our low and high note? And then this one, which is just actually a very pleasing sound because it's using good voice leading. Compare that to like a hypothetical, lazier version of this bass line that might be something like this. It's like actually not a bad bass line, but let's do that thing where we look at the parallels, the low note and the high note, and then the low note and the high note of the next chord. It's just octaves moving like that compared to, which is just dark and mysterious and beautiful. The next thing I want to talk about in this bass line is the register. The register is where on the instrument we are playing. Now this bass line has, like I said, an E minor chord in it, but it's interesting because we never get this low E here, which I think is pretty unusual to have an E chord in your song and you don't even use what's such a strong note on the bass, that low E. We love to throw that in there, but he purposely, I feel, kind of avoids that and creates a bass line that all takes place up in this sort of no man's land here on the bass, which is really cool. It fits in kind of with the lyric of the song, Move On Up. It's trying to create a more like floating, light feeling, and by not being anchored to the lower part of the bass, I think that contributes. This is also a great bass line to practice because so much of our bass lines happen down here. And we get to know that part of the instrument very well. And because that part of the instrument also repeats visually, starting up here, we tend to know this part of the instrument very well as well. But here between the 5th and the 11th fret can sometimes be a little bit more challenging. So this is a great bass line to practice to help get more acquainted with that part of the board, especially if you're reading the music, because when you read it, you're attaching those note names to a specific part on your fingerboard. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with this bass line is the use of syncopation. This bass line has a great balance between syncopated notes and notes that are played on the beat. So notice that when the chords change, at the top of the bass line, on that first E minor chord, the root note, the E, is anticipated. It's played on the and of 4. That note right there, anticipated. And then when the bass line goes up and then comes back down for the second bar of the E minor chord, that E is on the downbeat. He repeats this pattern of syncopation and downbeat for the B minor too. The B minor is anticipated right here. That B also on the and of 4. And then, now this time it's not the root note. We talked about that earlier. That's kind of a nice choice to not be on the root note. But the note is on the downbeat, which is very grounding. So this bass line sort of moves back and forth between this anticipated light up feeling, and then it roots it on the next bar, and then anticipation, and then rooting. I think that really plays a role in what makes this bass line so compelling, in what makes this bass line so interesting to be played over the whole tune for so long. The extended version of this, the non-single recording, is almost 9 minutes long. There's brief moments in there where it's not playing, but it's pretty much playing the whole time through. And it never gets grating, it never gets tiresome. And I really think that if it was anticipated every time, it might feel a little bit restless. And if it had a downbeat on every chord, it might feel a little static and not moving. Again, I think that kind of ties in with the lyrics. Move on up. It's kind of meant to be a song of freedom and forward motion. And I think this use of syncopation balanced with the downbeats really works for it. Okay, let's talk just a couple playing tips for this bass line. One thing that stands out to me about this bass line is this first note, this F sharp, is always very short. Go back and listen to the recording, check that out. It sounds like a very purposeful decision because it's never very long at all. I mean, it's not short, it's not clipped, but it's just, he puts a lot of space between that and the next note. This slide up here is very cool. I like to do that with my pinky, and it's just starting here. And I'm really just thinking about that as just, I'm playing an F sharp, but I'm just starting it here. That's a nice move to have down. That's one where I've heard students kind of, have to work a little bit to get there and get that sounding smooth. So spend some time with that. But the main thing about this bass line is just keeping the flow. You want it to kind of be singing, grooving, moving. One last thing to check out. There's a great video on this song on the YouTube channel, Diggin' the Greats. I'll link that in the description, where he digs into what beat this bass line actually starts on. I feel pretty confident that I've got it correct in my transcription, but you should check out the video if you just want to know more about this song. I think it's really cool. As always, I hope this was helpful and have fun.